evening, Mr. Zainal and fellow friends. Today, I, Roshni Alagovan, along with my group members, Dashika and Shobhashini, will be discussing on topic highly competitive environment is good for students. We encounter competition between humans or group of humans on regular basis, whether it is a sport event in the newspaper, firms trying to sell more than their competitors, youngsters racing to the door, the most published papers, or answer each question first. Competitiveness is the measure of person's desire to outperform others, and they tend to perceive situation as competition even if there is no clear victor or loser exists. And it shows that competition occurs regardless of age. Healthy competition between students is created by concentrate on achieving their best, having fun, mastering new skills, and this form of competition requires collaboration and active participation, while on the contrary, focusing on to be the best and winning is an unhealthy way to compete, such as encouraging people to be better than others rather than outdoing themselves and focusing on self-enhancements. There are a number of advantages and a few dilemmas when students study in a highly competitive environment.
Next, we will be looking into the benefits of a highly competitive environment for students. As of the first benefit, students get accustomed to dealing with deadline pressure. Deadline pressure, as well as unpleasant sensations connected with the lack of time, are universal in every highly competitive environment. As a contrary, it is not foreign to students. When the component of time is involved, a highly competitive environment allows students to enhance their performance not only in studies but also through co-curricular activities. Students can learn to focus, prioritize, and also engage with a heightened sense of internal control and concentration. Case in point, prior experience dealing with deadline pressures, students are able to accomplish a project or an assignment in a short span of time. Moreover, meeting deadlines is essential since it not only aids students in reaching the intended goals for a specific activity, but it also benefits them in the long run. Students who can perform well under deadline pressure will be able to always come together to accomplish a shared goal and keep projects on track. This is owing to the awareness that their failure to achieve a certain deadline might have personal or professional repercussions. Therefore, deadlines definitely play a prominent part in equipping students not only for the school but also for the future.
The most remarkable benefit that students obtain from studying in a highly competitive atmosphere is that they can know their strengths and weaknesses. The famous words of Jean Piaget ring true in childhood competition, which is play is the answer to how anything new comes about, shows that the spirit of competitiveness reveals the strengths of a student when they have or implement ideas to solve something are effective and useful even though they actually doubt themselves initially in the process. While on the other hand, when they lose, self-esteem is developed by coping with the negative emotional feedback of a loss, and more importantly, they can address their fears, confront insecurities by rising to the challenges. Students also have the potential to come to realization when facing academic competition, as Sigmund notably said, that out of your vulnerabilities will come your strength. According to child psychologist Tamar Chanki's book, Freeing Your Child from Negative Thinking, small setbacks will help children to become more resilient so that they can figure out what is lacking and how to fix it in order to be the best. For example, students who didn't win a competition can learn to be aggressive losers without allowing their self-esteem to be weakened or their motivation to compete in the future to be impacted. Most importantly, pupils can discover new and beneficial skills and at the same time can mend their weaknesses throughout the process of learning in this kind of atmosphere. By analyzing and fixing their potential and flaws respectively.
The next benefit is students' intrinsic motivation is increased. So intrinsic motivation is a type of motivation that is present in a student that pursues certain activities for the inherent satisfaction that a particular activity gives them. So an example of intrinsic motivation is students love learning or are interested in a subject due to the internal rewards that they get in the after process of obtaining knowledge in something. An example of this is a student spending few hours of their day reading a book or doing research on something because they love gaining knowledge on something new rather than just doing it for the sake of submitting an assignment or passing an exam. The next benefit of intrinsic motivation is it encourages students to stay persistent and learn with higher efficacy. Students with higher persistence are more likely to complete a task without giving up because they are doing it for their own satisfaction or personal accomplishment rather than just for the sake of receiving a gift or getting a bonus mark for an assignment for submitting it early. Factors like this can be called as in extrinsic motivation, which may be a drive to students but is in some way bad because students are only doing it to receive something in return instead of just doing it for their own self.
Meanwhile, despite all the advantages studying in a highly competitive atmosphere, students will experience low quality of study life as they tend to be in excessive pressure while studying. The student face to attain achievement under so much pressure as they push themselves off the limits to do something in order to fit in the competitive environment and lose sight of their precious health. These people will prioritize grade points over understanding while learning. For instance, students overthink and overdo until they become restless and fatigued to figure out what should be done to be the best in the class, which at the end will cause them to lose focus and become less efficient in studies. They also may end up in depression or even losing their valuable life. Along these lines, we can clearly see that overstressed students tend to be mentally and physically ill as they are unable to handle the stress efficiently. This will cause their school life to be ruined as they will not be enjoying their school life. This portrays that too much competition while studying can bring harm to students, especially to their mental health.
The next downfall of a highly competitive environment for students is they tend to lack interpersonal skills, and interpersonal skills are actually very important as they reflect one's personality. This skill focuses on an individual's ability to solve problems together, build healthy relationships with people, drive employee recognition during work life, and resolve conflicts in a calm and respectful manner. One of the reasons why students lack interpersonal skills is because they are always resentful and jealous when others do better than them. Oftentimes, students put too much focus in being better than their peers that they tend to not help each other. Due to this, they try to bring their peers down in every other way. For example, by not helping each other completing a task or a homework together because of their own selfishness of wanting to do better than everyone else in their class. This may lead to an absence in team working skills, which might be a problem in the long run. Next, students also tend to miss out on creating genuine relationships with their peers because they are always competing against one another. Social aspect is by no doubt one of the most interesting and exciting factors of school or college. However, this might not be the case if students are always competing against one another. Making friends is definitely much more easier if you are not always competing against one another. I personally feel that friends are very important when you're studying because it is always necessary to have someone that you can count on whenever you feel overwhelmed with your studies or your surrounding during your study life. However, if students are always competing against one another, it is by no doubt that they tend to lack the opportunity to create genuine relationships with people, thus leading to a boring school and college life. This in a way affects their communication and social skills, which might be a problem in the long run. This is because when you start working, you are going to be constantly meeting people and you should be able to communicate and socialize with them. However, this might be a problem for students who are always competing against one another because they do not socialize and they are always living in their own world.
Besides that, students also develop a low self-esteem in a highly competitive environment. The degree to which students are content with themselves and perceive that they are valued and worthy of respect is referred to only as self-esteem. Self-esteem is frequently encouraged and strengthened by admirable acts and accomplishment, even if it's a minor one. However, this is not the case in a highly competitive environment, especially for students. For students to take risk in their learning and rebound after a failure or adversity, they must have self-esteem. Students with low self-esteem tend to doubt their potential to succeed, and this makes them apprehensive to engage in learning or take the appropriate academic risks. As a result of high competitiveness, students tend to put their self-worth reliant on external sources of judgment. The more the students compete, the better they feel in a highly competitive environment. Students are also often encouraged that being good isn't enough, as they must also succeed over others. Nothing is tempered in a highly competitive surrounding, from the desire to do a task to the actual completion of it. Most people would lose in a highly competitive environment. On that account, low self-esteem among students is very detrimental because it stifles the students' growth in a lot of different aspects.
The hidden benefit of studying in a highly competitive environment is students learn to cope with stress in an effective way. Stress can be defined in terms of pressure, tension, unpleasant external forces, or an emotional response. Oftentimes, students' mental health deteriorate due to their inability to cope with stress. However, this might not be the case for students who have always been in a highly competitive environment, as it becomes a norm to them after a period of time. Not only that, competition encourages these students to reflect on their behavior under emotionally intense situations and develop strong emotional intelligence. Competency and control is very much correlated because if students are able to handle their emotions under emotionally intense situations, their preference to take on new challenges and work harder increases every time. Students should learn how to balance their life instead of pressuring themselves to an extent where they miss out on fun activities such as taking part in sports or having fun with friends, going out on family vacations and all those stuff. If students pressure themselves too much, it is most likely that they are going to end up adding more unwanted stress onto themselves. If students add unwanted stress and pressure onto themselves, this might lead to depression and burnout where they don't feel like doing anything due to lack of motivation. Therefore, students should understand that proper management and balance is key.
In a nutshell, we have definitely observed both the benefits and also the drawbacks of a highly competitive environment for students. On the whole, having a highly competitive environment for students can help them to do exceptionally well, not only in school but also in the future. Thank you.